A rapidly escalating conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran is entering a dangerous new phase, and the question now being asked in Washington and across the world is whether this war can still be contained before it spreads further across the region. Here's what's confirmed right now. 6 American service members have been killed in attacks tied to the widening conflict. The United States and Israel have carried out extensive strikes across Iran, targeting military sites, nuclear facilities, and energy infrastructure. Iran has responded with missile and drone attacks across several countries in the Gulf, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. And President Donald Trump has made clear that the United States is not stepping back from the fight, saying Iran's military capabilities are being decimated and leaving open the possibility that American ground forces could be used if necessary. But there is one detail in this rapidly moving situation that analysts say could determine whether the conflict stabilizes or spirals into something much larger. Right now, this war is no longer confined to one battlefield. Iranian missiles and drones have already struck multiple countries in the region, and U.S. and Israeli strikes have hit targets deep inside Iran itself. If that pattern continues, the conflict could expand well beyond the initial confrontation between Iran and the U.S.-Israel alliance. In the next few minutes, we're going to break down what has actually happened so far, why the conflict escalated so quickly, and why many analysts believe the next phase of this crisis may be even more unpredictable than the first. And subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because this story is moving extremely fast. To understand why tensions have escalated to this point, it's important to look at how the conflict began and why it accelerated so quickly. The war entered a new phase after large-scale strikes carried out by the United States, and Israel targeted Iranian nuclear facilities and senior leadership figures. Those strikes were intended to weaken Iran's ability to advance its nuclear program and reduce its capacity to support militant groups across the region. But the response from Iran came quickly. Iran launched a series of missile and drone attacks targeting U.S. military facilities and allied infrastructure across the Middle East. Some of those strikes hit bases and facilities used by American forces, leading to the deaths of 6 U.S. service members. When American troops are killed in overseas conflicts, the pressure inside Washington to respond becomes immediate and intense, and that's exactly what happened. The United States and Israel dramatically expanded their military campaign, carrying out strikes against military targets, energy facilities, and infrastructure inside Iran. Large explosions have been reported in multiple areas, including Tehran, where strikes have hit oil depots and other strategic facilities. Black smoke has been seen rising over parts of the capital following the attacks. The goal of these operations, according to officials, is to weaken Iran's military capabilities and prevent it from continuing attacks on U.S. forces and allied nations. But this is where the situation becomes much more complicated, because Iran has not limited its response to a single battlefield. Missile and drone attacks have struck targets across the Gulf region, including Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates. Some of those strikes have caused casualties and damage to infrastructure, raising fears that the conflict could drag additional countries into the war. When conflicts begin spreading across multiple countries, the chances of escalation increase dramatically. And that's exactly what analysts are watching for right now, because wars that begin with limited objectives can expand quickly once multiple actors become involved. At the same time, the leadership situation inside Iran is also shifting. Following the death of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei during earlier strikes, Iranian leaders are now moving to appoint a successor. Reports indicate that Mojtaba Khamenei, the late leader's son, may be selected as the next supreme leader, though the process is still unfolding. Leadership transitions during wartime can make situations even more unstable. New leaders often face pressure to prove strength and maintain control, particularly in conflicts involving foreign powers, and that can sometimes lead to even more aggressive military decisions. Meanwhile, the United States is signaling that its campaign could continue for as long as necessary. President Trump has said he is not placing time limits on the conflict and has suggested that additional military options remain on the table. One possibility that has been discussed by officials is the deployment of U.S. Special Forces to secure Iranian nuclear materials if those facilities become vulnerable during the fighting. That kind of operation would represent a major escalation because it would involve American forces operating directly inside Iran. At the same time, Trump has also stated that Iran's leadership will ultimately have to change course or face continued military pressure. Those comments suggest the United States is preparing for a potentially extended confrontation rather than a short-term military exchange. And the effects of this conflict are already being felt far beyond the battlefield. Several countries and international leaders have begun raising concerns about the legality and consequences of the military campaign. The Swiss defense minister has warned that the strikes carried out by the United States and Israel could violate international law and has called for an immediate halt to hostilities. Other European leaders have echoed similar concerns, warning that the war could destabilize the region and undermine international norms governing the use of force. China has also entered the conversation. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has criticized the war, saying the conflict should never have happened, and warning against a world where international disputes are settled purely through military force. At the same time, China has called for diplomatic engagement and cooperation between major powers, despite the escalating tensions. These international reactions highlight the broader concern that the war could expand beyond the Middle East. Whenever conflicts involve major powers, energy infrastructure, and global alliances, the ripple effects can reach far beyond the original battlefield. And that's why analysts say the next 72 hours could be especially important. If attacks begin to slow down, the conflict could settle into a tense but contained standoff. If strikes continue across multiple countries, the war could deepen into a broader regional confrontation. And if additional American casualties occur, the pressure inside Washington to escalate further would increase dramatically. Historically, conflicts involving proxy groups, regional powers, and global alliances can spiral quickly once retaliation cycles begin. Each attack triggers another response. Each response raises the stakes. And over time, the conflict can grow far larger than the original confrontation. Right now, the central question facing policymakers is whether that cycle can still be controlled. Can deterrence stop further attacks? Can diplomatic pressure slow the fighting? Or has the conflict already reached a point where escalation becomes increasingly difficult to avoid? The answer may become clearer very soon, because the next moves made by Iran, the United States, Israel, and the countries surrounding the Gulf region could determine whether this war stabilizes or expands into a much larger crisis affecting the entire region. Comment below. What do you think happens next in this conflict? Does the situation begin to cool down? Or is the war just entering its most dangerous phase? And if you want the next update the moment new developments happen, make sure you're subscribed.